The following message is transmitted.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today, my guest is Ivy the Occultist. Ivy has one of the fastest growing and, in my opinion, best channels on esotericism and magic on YouTube. And I am so excited to have you on the show. Ivy, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show. I kind of had a fan moment when you asked me to be on the podcast, because I've been listening to your podcast and I'm like, yeah, of course I would love to be on it. So happy to be here.
Awesome. No, thank you. That means the world to me. Honestly, that truly it does. And I love your channel. It's fantastic. And when I reach out to people to be on this show, it's because I admire them, because I think that they're great, because I think they're doing good things within this sphere, because I feel like there's a lot of the same kind of stuff floating around out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. But I love it when I find a creator who's taking a different approach. And I love the technical approach that you take to your videos. I love how thorough they are. And I really just love everything about them. And I love the topics that you choose too. Like you did a video on tulpas, right? Like who talks about tulpas? Like nobody.
Yeah, that was a really controversial video, and I've debated deleting it so many times because it's so controversial. But yeah, I mean, I try to do all the different things that I agree with and don't agree with, just to give some background.
Yeah, give some, some opposing opinions, right? And some like
Right.
cover multiple perspectives and multiple topics, right? And multiple perspectives is so much of what Chaos Magic is.
Yes.
Right. And so let's just get right into this. Okay. The reason I was so intrigued by you, aside from the quality of your videos, was that you do something similar to me, in that you take a technical approach to Chaos Magic that isn't within the any of the perceived Chaos Magic paradigms that are out there, right? Like there's a few different ideas about what Chaos Magic is. And as you were just saying before we really started in with the show, some of these ideas may not be as great as the others. So yeah, let's get right into it. Tell me what you think.
Yeah. Oh gosh, where do I even start with that? Yeah. So I think I've been kind of thinking about this too, because I think there's two different styles of practicing chaos magic that I've personally seen. And as a precedent, I can't define anyone else's chaos magic practice. I mean, we all practice very differently, and it's even hard to define chaos magic anyways, because putting a definition on it really kind of limits the practice. We can say what it's not, but we have a harder time saying what it is, So I think there's kind of two different routes that people go, and it's either they try to achieve ego death, they try to paradigm shift and really use belief as a tool and, decondition the mind and all these things. And that's typically what I would see as true chaos magic, if I were to put like a definition to it. And then I see other people that take pieces of chaos magic and add it to their existing magical practice without necessarily doing the ego death or trying to achieve ego death, without doing paradigm jumping. And they're just kind of taking it as a way to add some chaos into their practice. You know, like I was mentioning this to you before we started recording, but there are some people that have this misconception of chaos magic, and they think that it's just like chaotic and disordered and all over the place. And like you can take flaming hot Cheetos and put it in your spell work, and that's chaos magic. And while I think technically maybe, yes, sure, that's chaos magic, to me, there's so much more that goes into chaos magic than just grabbing random spell ingredients and throwing it into spell work and things like that. I don't think that people fully understand that there's this whole philosophy of paradigm jumping and that ego death that we're talking about that comes along with it. So I feel like there's two different categories of chaos magicians. They're the ones that just kind of do things chaotically and throw things into spell work. And then there are the ones that are approaching it from a almost like a very technical standpoint, where they're jumping on purpose, keeping track of those jumps, etc. Does that even make sense to you? Am I making sense?
It makes perfect sense. I
Okay.
completely understand what you're saying. And I honestly would put myself in like a gray area between the two, because for the last few months, I have been involved in a correspondence with Peter J. Carroll, who's the technically the founder of Chaos Magick.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You could say it's Austin Osman Spare, but right, Peter J. Carroll is kind of the guy who coined the term and developed it into what it is. And what I've learned through this correspondence, which if you're interested, you can find on my Patreon, is that my idea of chaos magic is very different than his. Even though he is a hero of mine, and that Liber Null changed my view on magic more than any other book I've ever read, I practice astrology. And to me, and this is like, we can talk about this philosophically, to me, the hermetic principles are demonstrable truth. Now that word truth gets weird when we're talking about chaos magic, because the first rule of chaos magic is nothing is true, everything is permitted, right? But when I look at the hermetic principles, what I see is something more akin to physics than metaphysics. And that's how I feel about astrology as well, right? I feel like this is an algorithmic property of the universe. Now, is that because I believe those things? And so that is because I believe them, that is how they manifest into my reality. I'm totally open to that possibility. I don't know, but those are at the core of my practice are, Western Hellenistic astrology, the hermetic principles, and chaos magic. And these things all contradict each other, right? And that's, well, not all of them, that astrology and hermeticism don't, but they do with chaos magic. And I even asked Peter about this, and his answer was like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, I agree and disagree at the same time. How chaos magician of me. But I agree with you, because I also practice astrology. I also love hermeticism. I am preaching that on my channel, that people need to know what hermeticism is, especially if you practice witchcraft, because a lot of that comes from the hermetic principles. But at the same time, I don't actually believe it's a fundamental truth, even though I do practice it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
So
totally.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good answer for right here, right now in this timeline. But I also believe in multiple timelines, of course. So in other timelines,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like that could not
Yeah.
be the case in another timeline. So who knows? I can't say that it's a
Totally.
fundamental principle.
I even go so far as to now. Let me make my stance on conspiracy theories pretty clear. Okay. I'm not because I feel like this is very important. Because in my 20s, I would go down these conspiracy theory rabbit holes and like mess myself up, right? And I think that's so bad for you. And so now, rather than taking a hard stance on anything, I just allow for like, sure, why not? Maybe not. I don't fucking know, but it's interesting, And one of the ones that I find the most interesting is this idea that CERN or some other phenomenon, maybe it's CERN, maybe it's something, but we collectively have jumped timelines like a lot recently, and that this is why we're experiencing Mandela effects. I'm pretty fascinated by that. Could be science fiction, could not. I don't know, but it's interesting, right? But I definitely prescribe to the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics. That's another area where Peter Carroll and I disagree, because Peter has his own cosmology that he has. I mean, he's a scientist, right? He's an actual scientist, and he has a theory of the universe called hyperspherism. That's fascinating, and this is part of what our correspondence is about. But to me, I prescribe to the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, which, you know, states that we have this ability to jump from one timeline to another and essentially steer consciousness through the infinite or nearly infinite parallel timelines. And I'm definitely with you on that. And I definitely do believe, or experientially believe, that we are living in a much more magical timeline than we were 20 years ago.
Oh, I 100% agree with you there. I don't really know if I have any solid opinions on timelines, because my opinions change all the time. And I just don't think our tiny pea brains are meant to know the answer. So for me, I just kind of let it go and go, okay, we're never going to know the answer. So me obsessing over it is never going to, it's not going to do anything.
Totally. Yes. That's the correct answer in the end, right? But a lot of these are fun too. Some of them are fun, and some of them will wreck you, right? Like, I feel true pity, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but you know, if you are really dedicated to the belief that lizard people run the government, you know, I don't see how that's good for you. I don't see how that could benefit your day-to-day life in any way, shape, or form, which to me, that's what magic is all about. It's benefiting your day-to-day life and benefiting your mental health, not deteriorating your mental health, right? So that's where I draw the line. If I see something that deteriorates my mental health, I don't give a fuck if it's true. I ignore it.
Yes.
I don't have time for that.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And not even just, I mean, going back to what you originally said about hermeticism and astrology, because I mentioned I love hermeticism and I love, love, love astrology. However, I've gotten into debates with people in the astrology community, and it's tough for me to accept even one system as the ultimate truth, because there's so many different systems of astrology as well. And there's so many debates about which system is the correct system. And I mean, I'm talking about so far beyond house systems, just systems of astrology in general. And so I love astrology, but do I think it's a fundamental truth? No, I don't, because I think it's so open for interpretation at the same time. Yes, I see the value in it. And I think it can be so helpful for learning yourself, learning the universe, macrocosm, microcosm stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't think we have all the answers yet for the planetary associations or, you know, the zodiac associations. So it's hard for me to say, I love it, but I can't commit to it. And I guess that's why I'm a chaos magician, because I have commitment issues. I don't know. But
yeah, no, it's for real.
I think I
let
really
me throw this at you though. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Trying to figure out which astrological system is the correct one is akin to saying which operating system is correct, Windows or Mac. There isn't one that's correct. They both exist simultaneously and are just different but coexist, right? So I think that different people may be operating from different astrological operating systems and are programmed to work within those systems.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah, because if I look at my birth chart in tropical astrology and then I look at my birth chart in Vedic astrology, which I've put both side by side. And this is obviously way deeper than what we need to go into today, because we're not here to talk about astrology probably. But since we're already here looking at them side by side, I can still see the parallels. It's different language that's used, but the message is still the same, if that makes sense. So I think it's
like a
helpful.
different coding language. Yeah. But essentially you're talking about the same thing. They're both operating systems. Right. And I find, so this is another one where, like, I'm not saying I believe in simulation theory, but I find it incredibly useful for describing magic and for describing magical paradigms, right? So when I describe one of the ways that I can relate to somebody what magic is I say it's reality hacking, right? Because they can get that. They're like, oh shit, okay, I get it. Because you can cheat in video games. There's a code you can put in. If you were like me and you were playing Doom in 1991 and you typed in IDDQD, you're in God mode now. You know, And one of the theories of the universe that's gained lots of traction is that the universe is made of information, right? And that everything we experience as a physical reality is just code, right? So maybe this coffee that I'm drinking is just code, and that code is giving me a cheat mode, a boost.
This is so true. I have a Discord server, and these kinds of conversations happen all the time. We have a conspiracy chat where people are just going off all the time talking about all these conspiracies. And it's funny you talk about this, because even though I'm a chaos magician and I feel like I should be invested in conspiracy theories, like that's almost just like a requirement, but I'm so not. I'm like, I don't know if it freaks me out. I don't know what it is, but everything that you're saying, I'm like, yeah, totally. We could be in a simulation. I don't want to think about it though, because that freaks me out, but sure.
Yeah. Sure, it could be, but like we can't know. And it's hubris to think that you can know.
Yeah.
Total hubris, right? And that's, so for me, because my magical practice, my philosophy, my being me is like this weird mix mash of things. I'm like hyper ADHD, chaos magician, person. I live in a different country than when I was born. Like I don't identify with fucking anything, right? So yeah, for me, I find these ideas incredibly useful, but I'm not saying I'm bought into any of them. They're just interesting ideas. They're useful. And I find Zen philosophy to be very useful to me, right? And the kind of ultimate answer in Zen is I don't fucking know.
Yep. Yeah, I was a Zen Buddhist for 5 years, and so yes, I totally resonate with that. It was actually a really seamless transition moving from Zen Buddhism to Chaos Magic, because we really don't know the answer.
So well together.
Yeah, they really do. I agree. I mean, the way that I practice probably wasn't orthodox anyways. Not the Zen Buddhism. It's not even an orthodox thing, but still, I was still doing magic during that time and being weird, and yeah.
Being weird is the best thing in life, man. It's like what it's all about. Like, what are we here for if not to be weird?
Right, exactly.
Right? This is all weird. This whole thing, all this reality stuff, it's fucking weird.
It is. So you mentioned earlier that when I was talking about the two different types of chaos magicians, you said you fall in between the two spectrums. I'm just kind of curious what you meant by that.
Well, okay. So okay. Through my correspondence with Peter Carroll, I have learned, right, that he takes a much more scientific approach than I do. I mean, when I say scientific, I mean hard science, because as I said, Peter Carroll is a scientist. He understands physics in a way that I never will. He has developed a working model of the universe that is being currently is jiving with what we're learning from the James Webb Telescope. He predicted the fade in redshift beyond what we thought we'd be able to see. And believe me, I know that I'm explaining this poorly out there. Okay, I know. All right. But he predicted this before James Webb discovered it. Okay, so he takes a hard science approach to magic. In fact, he has a mathematical formula for the use of magic, which I'm still absorbing. But for me, my magical journey started with atheistic LaVeyan Satanism when I was 13 years old, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. Somewhere within the few years after my father passed away. And I was told by a priest that he went to hell. And so yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I kicked him and went out and bought a copy of the Satanic Bible. And that was my introduction to esotericism, right? But I had also been thinking about it my whole life. Like I feel like it was very much born into it. And some of the first ideas I ever had about magic, and I remember having these ideas when I was not much older than my son is now, and he's 6. I remember building a computer with my dad, and I was I must have been 9 or 10, and we this is when Windows was like a new thing. And prior to Windows, you used MS-DOS. And so when I saw the difference between DOS and Windows, I was like, oh, I get it. So like reality is like Windows, and underneath that is a coding language. And then I thought that coding language is probably astrology. And I had that thought when I was like a little kid. And I just always, ever since then, believed that there was an underlying metaphysical reality. It was like just built into me. Okay. So I didn't get to Chaos Magick until I was 31, about, before I read Liber Null. So my magical practice has already been established in many. I was already paradigm jumping, and that's why I fell in love with Liber Null. Because I'm like, this is what I've been doing the whole time. I've been studying these different systems and taking what I like from them, right? So I liken Chaos Magick to MMA, okay, mixed martial arts versus traditional systems of magic, which I liken several of them to something like Kung Fu. And as it turns out, Kung Fu kind of sucks.
I don't know anything about that. So
so one of the things that was discovered by the invention of MMA and of the UFC is that not all martial arts systems are created equal. Kung Fu doesn't work in a real fight. They're just dancing. It's very elaborate and it's very pretty, but no, you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Good to know. Okay.
Yeah. So when I look at and again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but when I look at a lot of like very ceremonial magical practices, I'm like, okay, that's like Kung Fu. Kung Fu.
Oh no. Oh no, you are absolutely gonna offend for that. That's hilarious.
I know. It's fine. I'm not trying to offend, though. I'm just saying my opinion. It's beautiful, and I'm sure that it has a tremendous amount of benefit. I'm not saying Kung Fu has no benefit, but I'm saying in a fight, it's not very effective. Okay, Chaos Magick is always been result based.
Yes.
Okay, when in my magical practice, I always take what gives me the best results. And so here's what gives me the best results: hermeticism, astrology, the Elder Futhark runes, Norse paganism, Levian Satanism, and then all of that came for me first before Chaos Magick, and then Chaos Magick is like the thing that binds them all together.
I so resonate with that. I did the exact same thing as you before I obviously knew I was a chaos magician. I think it was like 13 or something. I started with witchcraft. Never went down the Wiccan route though, surprisingly, because I know everybody usually, it's like a gateway drug. People start as Wiccan and then branch to other things.
It's two though. There's Wicca and there's Levian Satanism. These were the two things. It's like, were you like that kind of goth kid or this kind of goth kid?
Right. Right. There were no options. I tried to do witchcraft without being Wiccan. It just didn't resonate with me. Nothing wrong with it. But so I did witchcraft for a while, and then I went down a super sciencey route, and I'm getting a degree in science right now. So science is definitely my passion. And then I spent 5 years as a Zen Buddhist, and then I spent a handful of years deep diving into shamanism. And then the last 5 or so years, I have been a self-proclaimed chaos magician, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of like you bounce around all these different paradigms, but it's nice because you can really truly figure out what works and not just brainwash yourself into believing something. Well, I guess that is the point though, right? Because we're using belief as a tool. So does it even really matter? Probably not. See, these are the conversations I have in my head. I can't even finish a thought.
I've been there. I totally understand. I went through like an existential crisis for a couple of years before starting this podcast, just with these questions in my mind, right? And trying to sort them out because I knew the answer was there. I could feel the answer, but I couldn't articulate the answer, right? And so what it really was to me, and the reason why I resonate with Chaos Magick so strongly, was that after having practiced several different magical systems and gotten good and having received good results from all of them, it's like, okay, so there is no correct religion, there is no correct magical practice because they all work. And that's when I started likening them to operating systems on computers. You know, Linux works, Windows works, Macs work, they all work. They're all computers. They're all incredibly similar, but they're slightly different, right? And then there's people out there who are like, no, I'll never use anything but Windows, or no, I'll never use anything but Mac. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't it not benefit you to be fluent in both of these languages? Language. Okay, language is another one. Let's talk about religions and magical systems. These are languages with which you use to communicate with the universe. And even that is going a little woo-woo for hard science type chaos magicians, but I don't care. I'm a little woo-woo, right? So if you think of these magical systems like languages, it's like, well, is there one correct language? No, they're all made up.
Yep. I love that analogy. I'm going to start using that from now on. That's a really good way to explain it, because I have had people actually get really offended by me being a chaos magician because I'm not able to commit to just one paradigm. And it's crazy how many comments I get and how many messages I get every day from people that are genuinely offended that I won't commit to a God being real or not real. And I don't know how else to explain it to them in a short amount of time. I don't know. Why are
They're
you bothering yourself
real.
with my belief? What'd you say?
I just say they're all real. They're all real because what's real? Define real, right? You can't.
Yes. Right.
And that's one of the things you learn through Zen Buddhism is that there is no such thing as real, that it's all just kind of a joke, that it's humorous emptiness, right? The only meaning that there is to life is the meaning you ascribe to it. And yeah, I think it's dumb, to be frank, and maybe I'm going to offend everybody with this episode. I didn't mean to. This is going to be the one, Ivy. This is the episode where I offend everybody.
I happen to bring that out of people. It's fine.
But like, what is real, and why would you want to even argue? Like, who cares? Like, one thing I don't understand, and one of the things that's the greatest thing about chaos magicians is there's no chaos magic. Like, we don't proselytize. I'm not going to go knock on your door and say, do you want to talk about like the beauty of chaos magic? I don't care. I want you to believe what you believe, because your beliefs, in my opinion, define your experience of reality, and you're having a different experience than I am. Mine is irrelevant to yours unless we're interacting in a meaningful way. And even then, they're very separate of each other. I don't care what you believe. I think what you believe is interesting, and I want to hear about it. But I have no interest in convincing you that I'm right, because I don't think I'm right. I think I'm probably wrong. But I'm just trying to find the closest thing to right as I can for me.
Yes. Yep. I totally agree with that. I don't think any of us are right. I think some of us are maybe getting close. Who knows? But I mean, as I said previously, we're not meant to know.
Like close to like the actual truth, probably not.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So for people to claim that their truth is the only truth and then to get offended that other people don't believe in their truth, that just seems ridiculous to me. And like, live and let live, man. Like, I don't care what you do, don't care what I do.
Yes, totally. And I like, for example, last time I did mushrooms, I did a lot of mushrooms. I had like a long conversation with Shiva. But do I think Shiva is real? Yes and no. The first time I did mushrooms, I had a very long conversation with Darth Vader. So do I think Darth Vader is real? Like,
interesting.
Yeah, but this conversation that I had with Shiva was profound, and it was actually life-changing for me. And I took a lot of great things away from it. And by the way, the first time I did mushrooms and I talked to Darth Vader, I was like 16 years old. And my friends, were like, oh, dude, you did that. And then they locked me in a closet. It was New Year's Eve. And the closet had nothing in it but a poster of Darth Vader. So, I don't do mushrooms that way anymore. I do them a few times a year now as part of my spiritual practice with the intention of having a conversation with an entity on the other side, however it chooses to present itself to me. And that's another. Okay, let's talk about the hubris of people believing that their gods are real. Do you really think that a god, an omnipotent entity, is going to present itself to you in its true form? No, it's going to present itself to you in a way that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, I totally agree. So in that case, then, do you believe that gods are psychological archetypes? Because I feel like a lot of chaos magicians believe that. But I mean, that's, again, dogmatic view as well. So what are your thoughts?
You're asking me to give away some of the stuff that I'm charging people for.
Oh,
no, yes. That's fine. I'll talk about it, and I'm happy to give it away. But I am, I did just launch my mystery school, and I'm really, really super excited about it. And this is one of the reasons, and this is one of the things that I struggled with through that existential crisis with these questions in my mind. And when I found the answer, it was like I almost fell over because it is so obvious in my face, literally in my face, because it's in that book that's right there. As above, so below, as within, so without. It's one of the Hermetic principles, the Hermetic principle of correspondence. So do I believe that the gods are psychological archetypes? Yes. Do I believe that they are actual entities that exist in the cosmos? Yes. because as above, so below, as within, so without. And because we know through neuroscience that everything that you're experiencing and I'm experiencing right now is entirely made up by your brain, this entire conversation that we're having is a cartoon that's happening in my mind. The version of you that I'm looking at is the version of you that I'm creating, and the version of me that you're interacting with, you're creating in your mind, right? And so it's, to me, that's why these things are so true. So to me, that jives with quantum physics. It jives with neuroscience. It jives with all magic. It jives with everything that works for me, right? So yes, and it also jives with the kind of ancient philosophy that we are made of the gods. That's exactly correct to me. Okay. So instead of getting in this argument about, well, are the gods the planets, the astrological view? Are the gods archetypes? Are the gods actual entities that exist in the cosmos? Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. The way that I see the gods is not necessarily like there are entities that exist above us in some sort of macroscopic way. And I mean, I do believe that they are psychological archetypes, but I also believe that there is God or goddess, whatever you follow, interspersed among everything in life. I mean, you, me, rocks, dogs, cats, all of us have this piece of God within us. And so it's not just psychological archetypes. It's you are accessing that piece of God or goddess within yourself that matches that sort of frequency. So I feel like for me, it's more of a frequency thing. And then there's God and goddess everywhere. It's hard for me to get behind. And this is where I need to work on, because I'm attempting to achieve that ego death, right? So this is something I need to personally work on, but it's hard for me to think of gods as sitting up somewhere in the clouds looking down on us. But that's something that I should probably push myself to believe, just to push myself there.
Well, I mean, I don't believe that. Okay, so if we're going to talk about it in a more scientific sense, then I believe that the gods are in the outer sense, in the as above sense, that they are energies. Okay, but we as human beings, which are anthropomorphic, anthropomorphize those energies. And that's when we get these archetypes, right? Because in the so below sense, in the human sense, these energies become archetypes because that's how we think. We're human beings. We're going to think of everything in terms of stories and of people. And so we describe these energies through stories, and the stories of how these energies will lead you down a particular path. So, for example, let's look at Set or Mars, which are archetypes of anger, gods of war.
Yes.
Okay. Now that is a very real archetype. That's anger. That's rage. That's war. That exists within every human being that's ever lived. And so if anger isn't a god, then what is? Anger is a god, and we've given it many different names, right? But it's something that exists with or without us. It just exists. It exists in animals, it exists in people, it exists everywhere. Now, people have much more complicated archetypes probably than animals do. And just using anger is like a very simple one, but there are much more complicated archetypes, right? But you could look at the path of where that particular path leads, which, to me, I immediately think of Star Wars and Anakin Skywalker and where anger and fear lead you, right? And that's an archetype right there, right? And I know people in my personal life who are ruled by anger, and it's very sad.
Yes.
Right. But the stories that we hear about these gods will speak about that exact sadness and why maybe you don't want to go down that path. Look at how jealous Set was of Osiris. Right.
Well, I'm not too familiar with that whole story, but what you're saying totally makes sense to me. And it makes me think of, so if we're talking about psychological archetypes, then I'm curious to know, and now I feel kind of bad talking about this because I'm like, this is like a reverse interview happening right now, but I'm so curious to talk about psychological archetypes further in the context of servitors or magical entities that you create, like a lot of chaos magicians will create these servitor entities that are simply just part of your consciousness, right? They're just magical entities that are servants that help you out with spell work. And so in that case, those servitors are psychological archetypes. So could you make a servitor a god? I don't really know. Like, would that technically be a god? I mean, if you're on a mushroom trip talking to Darth Vader and it was just as profound as talking to a god or a goddess.
You know, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
By the way, that was just a trip. The profound conversation was with Shiva. I don't fucking remember what Darth Vader said. I just remember it happening. Okay, I was a
All
kid.
right. Okay,
All
good
right.
to know.
But yeah. Okay, so I do have an answer to that. And again, I'm just talking about my opinion. I'm not trying to say here's the truth, right?
Right.
I don't do that. We don't do that here. But I would say no, because I believe that the gods, that the various, and if you look at the various pantheons of mythology of the ancient world, there are a certain set of archetypes that repeat over and over and over again, and those are the gods. But the servitors and tulpas and egregores that we as individuals create are individual archetypes of us that we can project into the astral to do our bidding. But to be a god, I would say you would have to be an overarching archetype.
Yeah, I struggle with this because, and I don't personally believe the servitors can be gods. Like, let me just put that out there. I don't personally believe that. However, I could maybe technically see an argument for it, especially if you are the type of magical practitioner that operates from the perspective of I am God, you know, because there's always like the two people that are like, one person's like, I'm communing with God, and then the other person is like, I am God, you know, two very different perspectives. And so, I mean, if you are God, if that is your perspective, could your servitors be godlike? Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, I get that, but I have a bit of a beef with the I am God people. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because number one, I just want to just throw this out there. I no longer identify as left-hand path. I am chaotic neutral, because I'm sick of black and white thinking. I'm sick of dichotomies. I'm sick of extreme polarization. Okay,
Same.
but I have considered myself a left-hand path magician for most of my life. But what I can't stand about the left-hand path is this EA co-wedding become a living god fucking bullshit, which I did a whole ass episode on, right? No, you're I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. You're not God. You're not the chosen one. Get over yourself. You are, in my opinion, you are a part of God, a fractal of God, a fractal image of the all, that your mind is a mirror image of the mind of the universe. But you, my friend, cannot levitate. You cannot you wave your fingers and make anything happen. And no matter how hard you believe this, it's not going to come true. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't, maybe if I believe hard enough, I can move things with my mind and I can really be Luke Skywalker, but I don't think so. Okay. And so I have a problem with the self-deification model, because I think it is extraordinarily arrogant. And I am a advocate of controlled arrogance. Is I think it is useful in magic, but you have to balance it out with humility and with an understanding of what hubris is, what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, with an understanding of science, with an understanding of yourself and of your own emotional and mental abilities, and to keep yourself in check and to keep yourself grounded. Okay, so I bounce my magical arrogance off of all of those things in order to keep myself in check. And I think that the I am God model is the opposite of that. And I don't like it. And the main reason why I really don't like it is because you see shitty people doing this. Yep. This is why I did a whole ass episode about EA co-wedding, who's a fraud and a scam artist who, you know, knows jack shit about occultism and is just conning people with this become a living god bullshit. You know, this is gonna be the episode, Ivy. I'm gonna offend fucking everybody.
Awesome.
So that's how I feel about that. I think that it's important to understand that you may be and probably are a part of God. And if there is God, right, like what I think of as God is consciousness. And just not a part of consciousness, not an archetype of consciousness, but the underlying substance from which all things spring forth is consciousness. And I think that would be that, or to say the all, as we do in hermeticism, that's what God is to me. And of course, we are a part of that, but you are not the entirety of it.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't know if I have a problem with the I am God philosophy per se, because I really I don't know. I don't really get too heated about other people's beliefs. That's not really how I want to say that. How do I want to say that? I just don't care enough. I'm like, if you believe that, then go off, do whatever you want to do. I don't really care. But it's when the arrogance gets bad enough to where they're starting to harm the people around them. That's when I'm like,
Yes,
okay, please stop. You're annoying.
that's
So,
exactly why. And like I said, my introduction to occultism was through atheistic Levian Satanism, which was kind of the beginning of this whole left-hand path self-deification model. And I bought into it for a long time, but I never went off the rails with it. And though I no longer consider myself to be a Satanist, and if you don't know what Satanism is and you're out there listening, like, it's not what it sounds like. It is atheistic and is not the worship of the devil in any way. It is a scientific approach, right? It is a approach that celebrates the blatant and rampant narcissism and hypocrisy of Christianity, which is something that I grew up with. And especially after losing my father and being told by some church idiot that he went to hell because he didn't believe any of this stuff, right? That certainly pushed me in a certain direction.
right.
But it's not, I'm not an atheist. I believe in spirit. I've experienced it, right? And though I may be able to talk about it from a psychological point of view, experientially it's very real to me.
Yes. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. It just got me thinking about ghosts and spirits on a whole tangent. Basically, when you talk, I have like 15 different tangents that happen in my head, and I have to dissect, okay, which one do I want to follow? Because you just sent me on a whole tangent about ghosts and spirits and the afterlife and the different perspectives chaos magicians have for that. Because I've had people ask me many times if I don't believe that there are gods necessarily above, and I look at them more as psychological archetypes, how can I believe that spirits exist, or how can I believe that there's any sort of afterlife? And so that just took me down that whole rabbit hole. But for the record, I do believe in spirits and other things among us in the fourth dimension, beyond our 3D world.
Totally. Me too. And I believe that the spirit realm is every bit as full of life as the ocean is, and that we are, and this is great because we have the scientific language to talk about this now, right?
Yeah.
We can talk about dark matter life forms. We can talk about realities that vibrate outside of our three-dimensional experience, right? And we can talk about the fact that we are only capable of experiencing less than 1% of the physical reality that surrounds us, right? And the way that I like to describe that to people is that, scientifically speaking, there could be a ghost breakdancing right next to me, and I have no fucking idea.
Sure.
Because it's not outside, it's outside of our perception, and our perception is like 0.000000001% of the full electromagnetic spectrum that we know exists.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It's like that analogy. I can't remember who this even originated from, but it's where if you draw a picture, it's in 2D, you're drawing like a stick figure or whatever. You can see the stick figure just fine in 2D, but that 2D stick figure cannot see us in the third dimension. And then the same applies for us in the third dimension. We can't see anything in the fourth dimension, but they can see us, which sounds really kind of creepy. Yeah.
And what's great about that, I love that, because I have a couple books that give that exact example, right? Oh. And it's beautiful because you could draw a stick figure, and then you could draw a circle around that stick figure, and that stick figure is now trapped inside the circle. It's a wall to the stick figure, right? But you can use your fingers and just walk across the circle, right?
Yes.
So we can break a physical boundary that the second dimension cannot. Well, what are we bound by in the third dimension? Space and time. Mm-hmm. But a fourth dimensional entity would walk over space and time the way we walk over that little circle.
Yes. Yep. I think that's the one thing that people get caught up on when they do spirit work, is trying to apply our 3D rules to the fourth dimension. And I'm like, you're overanalyzing it way too much. It's not even like that.
They're not bound by space and time the way we are. That's kind of the whole point. That's what makes them extra dimensional. Right? Yes. They're not bound by the third dimension the way we are. Our limits are the third dimension. Their limits are the fourth dimension. And guess what? String theory says there's 11. At least, right?
Okay.
So, yes. And this is important, right? Because I believe Now this is going to sound a little new age, but like I ain't, that's not what I'm saying. Okay. Another person to offend. So I believe, for example, that the goetic spirits are fourth dimensional because they're very close to us. But there are other spirits that are fifth dimensional, which are farther away. And we can communicate and work with either set of spirits, but there are spirits, there's a hierarchy to how close they are to us, right? The ones that create the most paranormal activity, the goetic spirits, in my opinion, or poltergeists and ghosts, there's a number of spirits where you can say are very close to the earth realm, but then there's others that are farther away. And I personally like working with the ones that feel a little bit farther away to me because I don't want them in my face so much.
That kind of reminds me of, so I work with spirits quite a bit. And I've developed this technique. I actually just talked about it on a video I recorded like this last week, but I created this portal in my mind and I call it Wonderland because I don't know what else to call it. But I walk down this corridor and then at the end of the corridor, I open a door and go into Wonderland, which is a really, really deep altered state of consciousness to where I can meet other entities there. And so I've been asked by a couple people, well, why do you work with spirits in Wonderland instead of in this physical mundane world? Because I could work with spirits as I'm doing tarot in the mundane world, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go into Wonderland, I find that I feel that I am able to communicate with them a little bit easier. And I think it's because I was just reading an article the other day about that old CIA report from like the 80s or something that basically confirmed that we may have the potential for transcending time and space while in an altered state of consciousness.
Experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it could be helpful for sure.
I'm doing those.
You are?
Process, yeah. I actually have a video up about it, about the second. So it was round 2. And for those of you who are interested and have been waiting for me to post more about this, let me explain. I started doing the gateway meditations. I got only up to number 2 and then had that insane experience, which you can go back and watch the video about. I had a full-on interaction with the Norse gods. It was, again, another life-changing experience for me. But then my life got turned upside down. My family decided to relocate from Ontario to Alberta. We moving, new job, new everything. I couldn't commit to it. Right. I wasn't posting podcasts for a couple of months. I was moving. I was sorting my life out. Now everything's sorted and I'm going to get back to the gateway meditations and I will continue to upload videos about my experiences with them. But fuck, I've done a lot of guided meditations. I've done a lot of transcendental meditation. I've done a lot of breath work. I've explored many ways to experience altered states of consciousness. And those gateway meditations are the most powerful that I've ever experienced aside from psychedelics.
Wow. I think I need to do those. I think I need to try that.
There is an app that you can get for free. It is called... No. Okay, listen, there will be a link in the description. Okay. It's a free app. I can't remember the name of it right now. But I will link it in the description of this video and you can do all the gateway meditations completely for free. And the only other way that I'm aware of to get them is to pay something like $1,000 to get them directly from the Monroe Institute where they were created. There's several up on YouTube. I happen to know for a fact that many of these have been altered. Do not use them.
Why is that?
Because the Monroe Institute developed the gateway meditations at their binaural beats with very specific frequencies that are set up a very, very specific way to have a very specific effect on your brain. If they have been altered and then put up on YouTube with new sounds or with sounds taken away or with things not set up the way they were intended to be, then I would definitely worry that they could cause psychological harm. Because again, go back and watch the video that I did about these. These are powerful meditations. Get them from a trusted source.
Wow. Okay.
So
good
either purchase the CDs directly from the Monroe Institute, which is probably the highest sound quality you could possibly get, and what I'd recommend if you can afford it, but fuck, I can't. Or check out the link in the description for the app that I'll post that has them for free, and they're not, tampered with.
Right. Interesting. I have such potent meditations as it is, almost to the point where I don't know if I want to go deeper. So I'm a little hesitant because that sounds amazing. I really want to try it out, but I also know my mind very well. And I don't know what would happen if that were
They
the
are
case.
no joke. I'll share the story of a meditation I was doing 5-6 years ago, which was shortly after I had the, my real spiritual awakening, not my magical awakening. I've been doing magic for a decade, 2 decades for fuck's sake. So I was deep in a state of meditation, and a completely unfamiliar voice just said hello. And it was not, it didn't seem harmful in any way. It seemed like I think that I made contact with an entity that I had been attempting to make contact with, one of my actual spirit guides, but it scared the shit out of me, and I jumped out of my chair, and I was like, no. And then I have not been able to reconnect with it ever since.
Oh,
because
no.
because I banished it. I told it to get lost because it scared me.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't at the state yet where I was ready to handle something like that.
Been there. Yeah, I have been there. I actually had that interaction with my servitor. I was because I do a lot of work with my servitors in the astral realm as well. Like if I'm going to edit them for any reason, construct or deconstruct, I go into an altered state of consciousness and work with my servitors there. And I have a pretty good relationship developed with my servitors that I use now because I have 2 long-term ones, and the same exact thing happened. And I with hearing the voice of the servitor, and it was a weird moment because it never had any sort of vocals beforehand, and then all of a sudden I was in this altered state of consciousness, and this voice that was totally foreign to me, was not mine, just came in and said hello to me, and I was like, oh my god, it really took me back. So and then I was like, oh my god, am I creating a tulpa out of this? Is this even a servitor anymore? I don't even know, but it was a cool experience, but terrifying.
I would be terrified to create a tulpa. I really would. I don't like paranormal activity, which is weird for someone as deeply involved in esotericism as I am, but it bothers me. I already have trouble sleeping. I'm just an insomniac person, right? But I don't need my lights flickering. I don't need things shaking in my house or things appearing in places where they weren't. I don't need that, okay? I don't need any poltergeist energy in my life whatsoever, because I try to be a very, very disciplined and an organized person, because otherwise I will fall apart, right? And so and that's probably the main reason why, although most of my friends do work with the goetic spirits, I choose not to, because they're just too all up in your business for me. And this is another reason why I don't really work closely with servitors personally, right? Like this is an aspect of chaos magic that I'm very familiar with, but I don't really actively engage in so much. I primarily, at this point, because now let me explain. At this point in my chaos magic journey, I am exploring Norse paganism.
Got it.
Okay. Now I am too ADHD to ever fully practice a religion full on, but I have stuck with this for a long time. And what the reason why wasn't so much of a conscious choice, it was that I had been working with Thoth for quite a long time. And Thoth one day in another meditation I was having kind of picked me up and he's dropped me off in front of Odin and said, stay here. And he took off. And I didn't know how to react to that. And I didn't want to do it. And I kept trying to continue to work with Thoth, and he wouldn't answer me. And then I tried all these other things. I was like, I don't really resonate with Norse pagan. I'm Hispanic. I'm this isn't my culture. This isn't I don't get it, until I finally settled in and started reading some books. I'm like, oh, I get it. Because everything about it jives with everything that works for me. Yes. And so it took me 2 years to figure out why I had been dropped in front of the Norse gods like this. And the entire time, they weren't trying to get my attention. They're just oh, you're ready now? Okay. Finally, dipshit. So that's where
absolutely
I'm at.
How it works.
And I think that that's where I will be in my chaos magic journey for the next several years, is exploring different belief systems as thoroughly as I am able to. And again, taking what works out of them and leaving behind the rest, which is why I liken chaos magic to MMA, mixed martial arts, because this is mixed magical arts.
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point about chaos magic that I'm always telling people, because when people are curious about chaos magic and when I talk about paradigm jumping, they think that this is like a quick endeavor, and it's really not, because you are immersing yourself in that culture. You're getting yourself to believe that that paradigm is real, and it can take years. I mean, you can spend a really long time in Norse paganism before you jump to the next one or whatever. I mean, obviously the key is to never really succumb to the dogmatism, of course, and to always have a
Course.
little bit level of detachment. But yeah, I think that people have that misconception that we're just jumping really quickly. So I like how you said that, because it is a slow jump.
Yeah, and if you are Peter J. Carroll or one of the masters of chaos magic, you may be able to do it day to day. But if you're learning chaos magic, no. Like, and it's an ADHD trait as well to be just distracted by squirrels and by different magical practices and want to dive fully into them. And I totally do that. But you do, if you want to accomplish anything, and again, chaos magic, in my opinion, is results based, then you need to really spend some time in each magical system. And I would not recommend, for example, trying to learn 2 at a time.
Oh no.
But let me say this, okay? Because that's what I would say for me. But my closest friend in the world is a goddamn genius. This guy is fucking ridiculous. Okay, he speaks more than 15 languages.
Wow.
And he's always like, yeah, no, I just learn 4 at a time. It's easy.
Okay.
So just there are people out there who maybe can do that, but I'm not one of them. Okay. I need to dedicate myself to something and really wrap myself up in it to fully understand it. But there are people out there with more powerful brains than I have. I'm not arrogant enough to not think that. I'm not a genius, but this guy is, and he can do things like that. So whatever works for you. But my recommendation, if you were coming to me for magical advice, I would say take it slow and 1 at a time.
Yep. I agree. Not many people are used to forcing themselves to believe in something, or just like getting a handle on something that is brand new to them. So I think going slow is good. And you're right. I completely forgot there are chaos magicians that do jump day to day. So I shouldn't have said that in the first place, because there are some chaos magicians that do that. But for me, I'm a very obsessive person. I'm a very all or nothing person. It's either 1,000% or nothing at all. So when I'm into something, I am in it and I am obsessing over it. And I really want to immerse myself in it before I move on to the next thing, before I get bored, and switch to something else. By the way, I don't have ADHD, even though it sounds like it, but I don't.
Well, okay. And this is one of the things too, because, you're not just a chaos magician, Ivy. You are a teacher. You have a YouTube channel where you talk about this stuff in a very, very educational way. And if you're listening to my podcast and you're not aware of Ivy the Occultist, you need to turn this shit off right now and go to her channel and subscribe and then come back, because it's, in my opinion, the best magical education that there is on YouTube.
Wow.
Straight up. It's fantastic. It's fantastic because there's a lot of teachers out there, but your teaching you give better explanations.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because you can glean a lot, right, from people talking about their own experiences or saying this is the way it is, but you take a different approach and you talk about things from multiple perspectives. You don't try to sell people an objective truth, which I really appreciate. It's, to me, the way education should be.
That is the highest compliment. Thank you for saying that. I mean, I definitely try really hard, because two of my passions, I don't even know if I mentioned this at any point, but so I'm double majoring right now. One is psychology and the other one is molecular biosciences. So I am obsessed. Christ. Yeah, I am a glutton for punishment. I know, I'm aware. So I love psychology. It's my passion, but I also love molecular bio. I love the science side of things, getting into biology and physiology and, all of those things. Physics, however, is the only thing I hate more than anything, which is really unfortunate for chaos magic because of chaos theory. And there's so much, like the quantum physics side of things that I just don't care about, although it's very necessary to learn about. I hate learning about it. But the science side of things, I think, is so important, and talking about the psychological effects of everything too. And I think that people, when they watch my videos, they maybe think that I only practice from a psychological perspective. And that's not true, actually. I mean, that is a big component of my magical practice. And I like to explain those things. But, I'm into the woo-woo too. I'm into all the things. So just to clear that up. I guess.
Yeah, and that's another misconception I think that people have about chaos magicians is that we are completely science-based. And it's and from the worst viewpoint of that is like, okay, you guys are like all science-based, but none of you actually know scientists. Well, you and Peter are both proof that that's not true. Okay, I'm not a scientist. I work in construction management. But listen,
Still very
I
valid.
love science and I love to learn about it. Okay, but the reason I talk about magic from a scientific point of view or from a psychological point of view is because it's understandable.
Yes.
And one of the reasons I dislike the approach to teaching, like you just work with this spirit, man. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But it doesn't explain anything to anybody.
Right.
And I personally am a person, and I'm like you tell me something, I'm gonna say why. I'm like, look at why. And if you can't tell me why, I'm probably not going to believe you. If you can't appeal to my logic, then I'm probably going to dismiss it, right? Maybe to my detriment, whatever, but I need that why. And so I think that a lot of chaos magicians feel that way. And so we like to talk about these things outwardly from a scientific or psychological standpoint because it's understandable to others, but then from our own personal practice may be deeply spiritual.
Yep, that's exactly how I feel because I am the same way as you. I need to know why and even if I don't have the answer to why, which is most often the case, at least I have something to grasp onto when I'm talking about psychology or quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and things like that. So I think it's nice to know that. And also, you could take advantage of it so much more. Like, yes, I don't have the answer to how magic works the way it works. Like, none of us have that answer. However, I do know about psychological triggers, and I can bring that into my magical practice and make it so much more efficient. And I do know about a little bit about chaos theory, and I can take that knowledge and bring it in and make it more efficient. Because as chaos magicians, we're looking for the most efficient and accurate results, right? So I think it's kind of our job as chaos magicians to do the research and to figure out the quickest way to get what we want out of a situation. That sounds selfish, but that's kind of what it boils down to for me, at least.
Well, I'll tell you my philosophy and why I've always kind of leaned towards the left-hand path. Okay. One of the arguments that you'll come up across if you're on Facebook in particular, and talking about magic or esotericism, is you get all these people, I'll call them people. Okay, people who are like will tell you that, if I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be rude. I'm trying so hard. I'm trying not to be
Don't
rude.
let it out.
Okay. But you hear this argument of like, okay, service to others is good and service to self is bad. Okay. Okay. So, but then these are the same people who would go on about self-care.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So here's what I think. I think that if you want to heal the world, you need to heal the part of the world that you are personally responsible for, and that's yourself.
Yes.
And if you want to add something good to the world, then you need to make yourself better. And so selfishness is incredibly useful because if I can make myself a better person, then I'm adding a better person to the collective, which is the world.
Yes.
Right. But if I try to pull everyone else's weight, then I can't pull my own. And now I'm not helping anybody. I'm a detriment to the world and someone else has to come help me.
Yep.
And I don't see that as being useful at all. Right.
Yeah.
I do think that once you get a grip on yourself, then doing things for others is wonderful. But if you don't have your own self in order, if you can't pay your own bills, if you can't keep a job, if you can't, and I know that these things are controversial and can be harsh, but like, listen, this is just how I feel. Okay. If you cannot manage yourself, don't try to manage anybody else. Don't try to help people. Don't any of that. Get your shit together. Right. Then so that's what I think.
That might be the one fundamental truth that I actually accept because I totally agree with that. And there's no hesitation in my mind either, because you can't help other people if you're not helping yourself. And I think that our society brainwashes us to put our needs last because that's better for the society, right? Like if we are giving ourselves up to the society and to the groups, then we're going to do better as a collective. So I guess is a form of control. That's really not the case though.
Yeah, you're supposed to believe it, but game theory will prove it's not true.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not true. It's demonstrably not true.
Yep.
It's a very feel good kind of thing. Oh, I'm helping everyone else. Oh no, I don't worry about me. I just worry about others. Okay, you, that person who's saying that, you are a detriment to the others around you, and you just don't realize it, and you're using that, oh, I'm helping others, as an excuse to not get your own life in order. Sorry,
Yes.
not sorry.
Yep. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of the archetype of the wounded healer, but I always see, especially in the spiritual community, there's these people that are born with these gifts to heal people. And instead of being a little bit selfish and healing themselves first before they go off and, heal other people. And honestly, it's not even their fault. They feel like they are born to do this, to heal other people, that they put themselves on the back burner, they forget about themselves, and then they fizzle out and end up not even being able to function in the mundane world at all because they're so burnt out from healing other people. So yes, I think selfishness is necessary. It's all a balance, right? Like, we need to help other people and we need to help ourselves. Not one, it's both,
Well, let me, to go on and explain why I feel the way that I do, because I was that person for the majority of my adult life. And even as a kid, I did feel that way. I still do feel that way, very much so. A call to help others. That's why I do tarot readings. That's why I have a day job, people. Like, I go to work every day. I'm not doing this to get rich or anything like that. I keep my prices as reasonable as I possibly can. But the reason I do it is because I want to make an impact on the mental health epidemic that is affecting people my age and people younger than me, right?
Yes.
And because learning about magic and esotericism and astrology, numerology, witchcraft, all of it benefited my mental health in ways that I can't even begin to explain. I want others to experience the same. But when I was younger, I always put others first. And guess what? I was a burden on everybody. And you got to figure that out.
Yep. That's usually how it goes too. I mean, because people are being so
and you end up as a
selfless.
drug addict.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I'm very lucky that I never ended up as a drug addict, but I was like this close. I was this close to being an alcoholic at one point. I was this close to being suicidal at one point. I have a very strong self-survival instinct, so I never went fully down any of those paths, but I was chronically depressed. I was on a fistful of medications every day when I was younger, and none of that's all gone. And I was even having a conversation with my partner this morning about this. I don't suffer from anxiety anymore. I don't get sad. I don't have negative thoughts. None of it. I still suffer from the physical symptoms of depression from time to time, lack of energy, lack of motivation, that kind of thing. But I don't have intrusive thoughts. I have conquered my anxiety. I've conquered the victim mentality that plagued me my entire life. It's very hard to bother me. It's very hard to get me down. And I believe that doing that work is the best thing you could possibly do for everyone around you.
That is exactly why I started my channel and why I deep dove into magic and esotericism and all of that. I so resonate with what you said because I went through a very similar thing where I struggled from severe depression and suicidal thoughts for nearly 30 years of my life. I mean, I didn't remember a time where I wasn't depressed and hated waking up every single day. And it was magic that finally got me through my depression. And I can officially say that I'm no longer depressed. In my mid-30s now, I'm not depressed. I'm not on medication. And that's a fucking miracle. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but
yeah. No, there's a bunch of words we can't say, but none of them are swear words.
Great. Okay. Well, yeah, it is a miracle. I mean, it's kind of incredible because if I think of Western medicine, and I'm a psychology major, okay, so I know how that works. And I was in therapy for years. I did life coaching. I had countless medications that I was put on from the age of 16 onward. And magic is what did it. Are you kidding me? Why would I not want to share this with other people? That's incredible.
And also, it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. You get to play. Who doesn't like that?
Like, come on. Like, this is fun.
Yes.
This is fun. Having these conversations is fun. Like, everything about this makes me happy, and it's aesthetically pleasing. It's fun. It's like, It's a fucking party trick. I can bring a deck of tarot cards. It's an icebreaker. I can start a conversation with anybody by asking them what their sign is, and I can tell them all about themselves. Especially if I can see your chart, then I can really start to freak you out. Right?
Right.
It's enjoyable, and that enjoyableness in itself is got to be at least 50% of what lifts you out of that depression in the first place.
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Because is it fun to drag your ass to therapy once a week and do this and that and all the other things? No, it's miserable, and it keeps you in a state of misery. I'm not saying therapy doesn't work. By the way, therapy fucking works. I've been to
Yes, it
therapy.
does.
Therapy is a good thing, but I'm saying it kind of lacks the element of humor and fun that magic has.
Yes. Yep. I totally agree with that. And I should probably say, because I love psychology so much, that if I hadn't done those years and years in therapy, there's absolutely no way that magic would have been able to do what it did for me, because I had to be in a state of fully understanding where I came from, why I was depressed in the first place, in order to even do the magical rituals that I did to kind of heal myself. So for anybody listening, I want to make sure if you are depressed, please go to therapy, because it really does help.
Yeah. And also, I have this disclaimer written up on my website, but I want to say it, here on the podcast too. Magic is never a replacement for medical or psychiatric help.
Yes.
It's not a replacement. It's something you could choose for yourself, right? But I am not advocating to you that you drop your therapist and get a tarot reader. I am not saying that. Don't fucking do that, okay? Like, whatever works for you, and that this worked great for both of us, it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, okay? And maybe this is just the way that we're built, and that's fine, and I love talking about it, but do not ever, like, because some guru on YouTube said pharmaceuticals are bad, stop taking your medication. Don't fucking do that. Okay. Don't drop your therapist and then, like, don't drop your therapist and then come see me. Don't do that. Okay. Like,
Right.
book a tarot reading if you want a tarot reading, right? That's wonderful and good, but therapy is also good. And, even though I am proud of the fact that I got myself off of all but one medication, I still take an ADHD medication, because without it, I will fall apart. But I know, because I've tried, that I'm not saying pharmaceuticals are bad, because there was at a time when I was much younger that I got onto Wellbutrin, and it saved my life.
Yes.
100%. But after 2 years on it, it was doing more harm than good. But in that initial phase, it's what saved my life. So I'm not saying that these things are bad. And I want to make that very clear, because there are so many fake ass gurus out there telling you pharmaceuticals are bad. Don't go to therapy. Don't listen to those people.
Yep, I so agree. I love medications, honestly. I mean, obviously, I'm going to try to do everything in the most natural way possible, because that's just my personality. But there is a time and a place for medication and for therapy, and it's very necessary. So I'm glad you said all that.
Yeah, it's important, right? Because it's one of these weird things that happens when people start down a spiritual journey, is they get bombarded with that kind of information and they start to really believe it. I know, because it happened to me, when I was much younger. Like, but don't buy into that shit. And also, this is a Chaos Magick thing too, right? That one of the things I love about Chaos Magick is that we reject gurus. We reject, like, all of that. Like you tell me you know the fundamental truth. No, you don't. Fuck off. No, you don't.
Exactly.
Nope. I'm not gonna pay thousands of dollars to go to India to join a cult. Okay, don't do that.
I feel like the gurus
that I want for my clients, more than anything, and for my students, is for them to never end up in a cult.
Yeah, I feel like the gurus are the same types of people that claim that they are God. Just throwing that out there. So, yeah, I'm not about that. I don't think anybody has the ultimate truth. So please stop.
No, it's all about just what works for you, right?
Yes.
And I think it's wonderful that this is what works for you and it's what works for me. But for other people, it's going to be something different, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But there are things out there that I think you should avoid, and cults are definitely high on that list of things that are probably definitely not good for you.
Yes. I think
and there's a lot of that in the spiritual community now.
There is a lot of that for sure. And I think that what you just said is what trips people up the most with Chaos Magick, is finding what works for them. Because people always ask me, because I have videos about Chaos Magick. That's my thing. That's my specialty. I mean, I do a lot of other stuff too, but and people are asking, well, how do I get started? What do I do? And I'm like, I can't tell you that. I can't. I mean, I can give you some starting points, look into sigils, look into servitors. But I mean, even amongst you and I, you don't work with servitors and I do. So every chaos magician is different. And you really do have to figure out what works for you. And that's so abstract for people. And they're like, well, I need a system. Like I need A, B, C, here's what I do. And I'm like, well, Chaos Magick is going to push you to decondition your mind, because you have been taught that because of the 12 years of schooling that we have to do and more in our culture. Like we're very taught from a young age to have this structure of learning, and you have to completely throw that out of the window when you get into Chaos Magick. Like I have, just to go on a rant for a second, I have so many occult books to the point where I really need to pare it down. But the occult books that I have the least amount of are the ones on Chaos Magick. Like I have books in all these different categories. And then surprisingly, Chaos Magick, the one thing that I claim to be my specialty, I only have like a handful of books, and it's not that much. I just recently purchased some because I really wanted to read some other authors. But beforehand, I only had Liber Null and Condensed Chaos. Like those were the two Chaos Magick books that I owned, and that's it.
The best, in my opinion. I mean, they really are the fundamental texts.
Yes.
But first of all, everybody, if you want to learn Chaos Magick, sign up for my course. It starts January 4th. But now to address what you were just saying, there's a reason why we don't even get to Chaos Magick until the second degree of my mystery school. Because I think that you do need that structure first. If you're completely new to magic and witchcraft, because that's how I went about it. And so I'm going to teach people the way that I learned, right? This is why I'm teaching the fundamentals, which to me are the Hermetic principles, astrology, and tarot. I think if you can get a grip on those three things, you can get a grip on anything, right? But going straight from like 0 to Chaos Magick might mess you up.
Yes.
Right? Because we're talking about paradigm shifting, right? Because there is no structure to it. So maybe having some previous experience with a structured magical practice will give you a foundation from which you can explore Chaos Magick. And I feel like that's the right way to go about it. That's the way that I'm going to teach people. But maybe not for everybody. I don't know. That's just what I think works best, because it's like you can learn how a system works, then you can learn to break the rules of the system, then you can learn other systems. You can always go back to Chaos Magick as this way of saying, okay, this explains a lot of these questions in my mind of like, okay, why does this magical practice work, but also this magical practice? Well, if you have that foundation of Chaos Magick, you can reconcile that in your mind and you won't go crazy. And believe me, occult psychosis is a real thing that a lot of people suffer from. Okay, you can damage yourself through the occult. It's true. If you're not grounded, if you just dive off the deep end into spirit work with no experience and with no understanding, like I've seen it happen. I've seen people go through like occult delusion and psychosis. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
Right. So I think having that foundation is incredibly useful.
I think you're so right with what you just said about you need to know the structures before you're able to break them. That's so true. And even though I typically tell people, well, I can't really tell you what to do, I can give you some pointers, but I can't. But I also respect what you just said about that, because you're right. I'm operating in a place where I already knew some of the rules. And so for me, it's easy to not transcend them, but to break them, because I already know what they are. And so for beginners, you're totally right. I think it's important to know the fundamental truths that people claim, I suppose, and then see how you can modify that to fit your own practice from there. So congratulations, by the way. That's really exciting.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I've been working really hard on putting this course together for the last 2 years, and it's finally time to launch it. I was just waiting for 22 to fucking end, because fuck this year. It's been goddamn awful. It's cursed as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, really super excited to start this course. There's I think 12 spots left. Yeah. Thank you. I'm stoked about it. I'm a little bit nervous, But I have a couple students who I teach individually right now, and I don't have time to take on any more. So I decided, okay, it's time to do a full-on structured group course with the full 9 yards, with degrees of initiation. And, so I'm providing a structure while also teaching you not to have structure. That's the way I'm going about it, right? I'm providing a community, hopefully, of people who can talk to each other and learn from each other while also staying away from dogma. And that's another one of the things what I love about the Hermetic principles and about astrology is that they don't have any dogma involved in them, right? There are astrological religions, right? But I don't talk about astrology in that way, right? I try to talk about it from a very scientific point of view. The Hermetic principles are more akin, like as I said in the beginning, to physics than they are to any sort of like dogmatic belief in a god. There's no mention of any god in the Hermetic principles, just the all, which is simply another name for the universe. Now I know that the Kabbalion says that that's not exactly true, but it also kind of says that it is. It's weird, right? I think the all is pretty interchangeable with the universe.
Yes, I agree with that. Well, I'm excited for you. I honestly, if I wish I had access to something like that when I was a beginner, like that would be, because you're covering all the important things, like all the things that I find important as well, even though I can't claim any of them to be fundamental truths, obviously. But I think that those components are going to be really helpful.
Yeah, and you don't have to take them as fundamental truth at all, but they're useful. They are tools. Astrology is a tool. Numerology is a tool. Tarot is a tool. These are tools, and you can use these tools to build a better life for yourself. But that doesn't mean, right? Like I go to work, but when I was still a construction worker, and I would bring an impact driver and a hammer and wear them on my belt, right? But is the hammer a fundamental truth? No, it's a tool. It's a tool that I'm using to build a house, right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean anything, but it's very useful to me, right? And so through navigating the esoteric realm, I find that these tools to be incredibly useful, right? Like let's say on the scale of tools and usefulness, I think that the Hermetic principles are as useful as an impact driver or a hammer, whereas I don't know, pick another one. You could pick any other religion or belief system, and to me it might be, okay, this is as useful as a hacksaw. It's got kind of a specific purpose, and that's fine, but I can do way more with my hammer than I can with my hacksaw. Does that make sense?
Sure. I know nothing about construction, even though my partner is literally a foreman, but my eyes glaze over when when somebody talks construction with me. I'm like, boop, I don't know. I don't know where I went, but it's not here. So yes.
Yeah, there's tools that are more useful than others, and there's specialty tools, right? Like for example, I don't bust out my Sawzall all that much. I mean, it is actually a really useful tool, but okay, let's think of another one. I don't use my oscillating tool. My oscillating saw is very useful to me specifically because I worked in drywall. But if you're not a drywaller, then maybe that oscillating saw, maybe you don't need one. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop with the construction talk now. But that's just how I see these things, because that's how I relate to my own life. So I'm trying to give the most useful tools that I can, the ones that are like give the broadest perspective and are the ones that can really applicable to any path, right? Like I don't care if you're Wiccan or if you're a Satanist or if you're a Luciferian or if you're a love and light person or if you're pagan in a very specific way. These tools are applicable to all of that because none of them are going to tell you that your beliefs are wrong.
Yes.
But they will help you understand your beliefs and your belief system and yourself a little bit better.
Yep. I agree with you. I'm excited for all your beginners. Not even beginners. I feel like this is like intermediate, almost too adept to. I mean, you can become an adept with your school that you've got going on. So.
Well, yeah, it's not a weekend seminar. It's a 2-year program that I've designed. Right? And the first year, if you complete the first year, and there are exams and there is homework, like it's not a joke, it's a commitment. If you pass the exams, and you get get one of these, which is the antique silver Order of Chaos pin. Here, I'll take it off and show you.
Yeah, I gotta see this now. Oh, it's a little fuzzy.
Yeah, it's because I use the cell
Oh,
phone.
there we
we
go. Oh, lost it again,
Come
but I saw
on,
it for a brief second.
for a brief second. Come on, do it. Do the thing. Do the thing. It's not going to do it. Well, look, you can go to my website and you can see beautiful images of these. So I have these silver pins made with this logo on them for the first year graduates, and I had the gold ones made for the second year graduates. And you know, it's a process, right? My goal is to be able to take somebody from 0 to adept in 2 years.
I love it.
That's what it's designed to do.
Who doesn't love that kind of curriculum? I mean, this is why I'm in school for 1,000 years. Like, I wish somebody would just pay me to be a student forever, because that's my favorite structure, obviously. So I get it.
Yeah, no, me too. And I get so bored if I'm not learning something new all the time.
Yep.
That's one of the things that can really like bring on about of depression for me, is if I'm not learning anything.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, fuck. I could keep talking to you for like hours upon hours.
I know.
But that's really kind of all the time we've got. That went fast.
That was so fast. Yeah. I didn't think that we were going to talk that long. So yeah, great conversation.
Yeah, really great. Thank you, Ivy, so much for being on the show. It's been a true pleasure talking to you. I love these like fast and hard conversations where we're not sitting here trying to think of something to discuss. Like, that was great. So really appreciate you. I love your channel, and thank you so much for appearing on my show. It's truly an honor. And yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.